It's 5 years since Britain left the EU. Of course, Downing Street says there's no marking of the occasion. It's not really an anniversary. I didn't expect lights up or some kind of celebration or dance from the Prime Minister, but it is 5 years today. The Conservatives are accusing Labour of trying to undo Brexit, while Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says if he becomes PM, he'll deliver a proper Brexit that 17.4 million people voted for, something he's long argued has still not been achieved. It comes as a new poll shows just 1 in 10 think Brexit has been a success, with over half the public backing to rejoin. Let's chat with Denis Macshane, former Labour MP and former Minister of State for Europe, and Lance Forman, former Brexit Party MEP. Afternoon to you both. Denis, I know you were a Remainer, very passionate about Europe. You were Minister for Europe as well. How do you see it going so far, 5 years down the lane? Did you pop the champagne today to celebrate?
No, it's very bad. So many jobs lost. It's a tale, if you like, of 2 millions. We've made 1 million fewer cars than we were before 2016. And the Tories, Mr Sunak and Miss Braverman and the rest of it, Kemi Badenoch, have imported 1 million immigrant workers from India, Pakistan, Ghana, Nigeria, to do the jobs that Europeans just, a short drive or flight away were doing, coming backwards and forwards and fitting in according to how the labour market needed them. But with 1 million people coming in on visas with their children, dependents, it's completely changing the population nature of Britain. So we heard the chairman of the Federation of Small Businesses on the BBC this morning. His members are suffering. About 20,000 small businesses have simply stopped selling to Europe, stopped exporting because they can't get in there easily. I'd really love to see where this famous upside is going to be coming from.
Yeah, well, maybe Lance can tell us. Lance Forman, good afternoon to you. Denis there, and true to his own beliefs and principles, but outlining there some of the issues. Where is the upside?
Well, we haven't really seen any upside as yet. I think it's too early to tell. I think basically what's happened is, we were sort of locked in this space, and the Brexit vote was about learning how to unpick the lock so that we could leave. And we've sort of just been standing by the exit for the last 5 years saying, right, we can get out now, but, should we?
What haven't we done, Lance, that we should have done?
Well, there's so much that we should have done, and in so many different areas. Deregulation is the big one for me. There were many different reasons why people voted for Brexit, and for some it was about sovereignty, some about regulation, some about immigration, but we haven't done any of them. And I think that's the problem. In my view, the main reason why people voted for Brexit wasn't those specific issues as such. It was because for the previous 25 years or so, our economy had sort of stagnated, nothing was getting done, and people just felt that they wanted something to change. They felt that all the politicians across the board were just sort of tinkering around and nothing was really getting done. And what they wanted was some really bold leadership, sort of almost like you're getting in America now. They wanted politicians that could actually lead us and make some big decisions. And I think what's happened is we had the vote, and then rather than actually make those bold decisions, we're back with the same people before, sort of tinkering around. And we haven't taken advantage. But the only good news, I would say, is that we're in a position that when we get that strong leadership, we're in a position that we can take advantage.
I mean, is that fair enough, Denis? I mean, if you think of people like Rishi Sunak and certainly Theresa May, I mean, I never quite understood where Rishi stood on all of this. We know that Theresa May was a Remainer. We know Keir Starmer was a Remainer. Boris Johnson, well, depending on which way the wind was blowing that day, depending on whether he was a Remainer or a Brexiteer. We've not really had a leader that's got Brexit in their DNA, and if we had one, then you'd soon see those sunny uplands.
Yeah. I mean, I go long on Trump today, a man who, as America is grieving the loss of all those lives at the bottom of the Potomac, says the fault is because air traffic controllers in America are mentally defective. I don't want that kind of leader. I want a Margaret Thatcher who blasted us into the single market, who got all the Japanese companies to come in because we were in Europe. And the idea that quitting the world's biggest market is nuts. Now, I know Lance's firm, Lance's family firm, not himself, is the best smoked salmon producer in England, in London.
Yeah.
There's a kid from...
Had some last night, as it happens, but that's another story.
I am delighted that Lance, when he was running it, got European protection for London smoked salmon. So here we've got a real proper true European on your show, Ian, and he's whining away saying it's not happening in the long term. As Lord Maynard Keynes said, long term, schmong term. In the long term, we're all dead. Lance, I'll die before you, and when I die, if we're still out of Europe, we'll be poorer, and then 40 years later when you die, I don't know what state we'll be in.
Hopefully you'll have a salmon sandwich in your hand, Dennis, when it happens. I mean, were you protected, Lance, by Europe?
Well, now you've brought my business into it. Let me just say a few things in terms of business and Europe. Our business has been going for 120 years, so we've been around as a business a lot longer than the EU was ever around. And, when we joined the EU in the mid-1970s, at that stage, we were already exporting into Europe. We were exporting into the Far East and into the USA. And everyone said that joining the common market would be great for business in Europe. It didn't bring us any extra business in Europe at all. We were already trading there. We got no extra business from it at all. What it did bring us was just a huge raft of expensive regulations that have just made our business less and less productive as every single year has gone by. It hasn't helped us at all. We left the EU now. We still trade with Europe. We're not finding it any more difficult now than it was before. The tough thing about business is finding the customer, convincing them you've got the best products, convincing that the price is great, getting them to order, getting the bill collected. That's the tough stuff. Filling in a form that takes 5 minutes when you're shipping the goods is not a big deal. So, it is.
Okay. Dennis, were you going to come in on that point?
It's the regulations that are the killer. It's the regulations. But what we learned, okay, Dennis, is that having Brexited, what we learned is that British bureaucrats are just as bad as the EU bureaucrats. We've gold-plated so many of these regulations, and we have to get out this mindset. And my hope is that what's going on in America now with Doge will actually, some of that magic will sort of spread across.
Dennis Macshane, can you respond to that point?
I listened to Martin Maguire, the boss or the chairman of the Federation of Small Business, on the radio at 6 o'clock this morning, and he said that it was a complete nightmare. The Institute of Chartered Exporters says 20,000 of their members have simply had to close down and gone out of business, because you may be able to export to Europe. I'm delighted for you, Lance, but others can't, because there are now barriers that Boris Johnson and David Frost and all you Brexiteers put into place. When we voted in 2016, it was to leave the EU like Switzerland or Norway, not be subject particularly to their laws. It was not to cut all links, to cut all access to workers, to cut all inward investment. Paris, the Stock Exchange of Paris now sells more shares than the London Stock Exchange. Lord Mayor,
not anymore. We've come back.
No, I'm sorry. You're confusing the financial services sector, which is very strong in Britain. Thank God we got one sector that's working well. But I'm quoting the Lord Mayor of London, who's not Labour, not pro-European, and he says London's taken a big hit. Big report at the end of last year. When are we going to wake up and smell the coffee? It's not working.
As a businessman, Dennis, when you're looking for markets, when you're looking for customers, you look for customers that are growing, that have got great opportunities for you to sell your products into. You don't sell your goods and your wares to companies that look like they're on their last legs and going bust. Europe is one of the worst performing areas of the globe, and it has been for a long, long time. The German economy has performed worse than ours since Brexit. We should be focusing on growing markets like the USA, and we've done brilliantly to accede to the CPTPP, which is a bigger market now with us as part of it than the EU.
All right, Dennis, can I ask you this? When you were Minister for Europe and Tony Blair would send you over to those big meetings on your lovely private jet or whatever the heck it was, You turn up. I know. You turn up at these powwows with your cohorts and counterparts from all those other all the other ministers, say Spain, Portugal, etc. Did you ever look at it, this monolithic system, and think, man alive, this is absolute. What are we paying for here? Why are we spending £18.4 billion a year for all of this? The increase in bureaucracy was absolutely huge. Nothing like the common market back in the 70s. 2 parliaments, its own currency, a flag, a national anthem, 17 zillion presidents. I mean, what the heck was it? It's like another planet going on over there.
Yeah. Just imagine America, if every state had its own currency and its own laws, how well that would work. I went there and I did fight very hard. Luckily, I could speak French or German. I think I just fell off the chair finding any English person who could speak a European language and gave
Fair
me
enough.
what we wanted. But in general terms, 1945, before I was born, long before Lance was born, Britain traded about 5% with the rest of the world. When we joined the European Union, we're now trading at about 15%. It's called trade, and it's across the channel from us. They all have their own laws, their own rules, every law that affects trade has to be accepted by a national parliament.
But we had to pay £18 billion a year, Denis, to do that trading. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of money. I mean, Tony Soprano couldn't have made that up.
Well, for heaven's sake, we've lost 1 or 2% of GDP. You know what our total GDP is? £80 million. I mean, you think Elon Musk knows what £80 million buys? I mean, soon Nigel Farage, all the extra money he's making now as a sort of as a Tusk, Trump, Barker in England, he's going to be much richer than that. So it was a way of getting incredible, good access, better access. All of our people could buy a little home, little flat, if they wanted to, in the south of Spain, the south of France. Metal workers, steel workers, coal miners, where I was an MP, could live in warmer parts of Europe, like North Americans could retire in Florida, because America is one economy, one set of laws, one set of rules, and everybody obeys them. And we seem to think, oh, we don't like that, we don't have to obey them.
OK, all right, can I just a final point to both of you then. Let me ask you this first, Lance. At the moment then, I think your contention is we haven't really got the Brexit that was imagined by people like yourself and Nigel and others. Going forward, 5 years down the line, so it'll be the 10th anniversary of Brexit, will it be a success? Will it look as you want it to look?
I certainly think it's moving in that direction. You know, I think that people across Europe and in the UK are seeing what's going on in America. It's growing fast. There's a real positivity and optimism out there.
Okay.
And I think that they will want some of that over here. If we carry on with the same old policies that we've had for the last 25 years in Europe, you know, we're doomed to failure. So I'm actually quite optimistic about the future.
OK,
yeah.
and Denis, even as a Remainer, even somebody who fights from that particular corner of this debate, can you see in 5 years' time, you know, it's not a law of physics that we're in the EU, right? I mean, Japan's not in it, India's not in it, they rub along rather well. I mean, can you see a bright future outside the EU?
I'd love to believe it, but they trade into Europe and they're not worried about obeying European rules. Here we have this constant whine that sharing and being a partner with other countries, sharing common rules, is somehow robbing us of our birthright. I would love, as Winston Churchill said, talking about the 1930s, people seem to think that we should up anchor and moor off Canada, and then we won't have to worry about Europe. We cannot become American. I frankly don't think, as a human being, I want to live under some of the really evil things that President Trump already is doing. That's not British. It's not English. It's not what we fought for in the Second World War. And I go quite long, Lance, before saying, let's become an American colony. Be proud to be British. Be proud to be a great leading European nation once again.
I tell you what, Denis, as an old socialist that you are, I say that respectfully, you cited 2 Conservative Prime Ministers in this discussion. That's not bad. Great to have you both with us.
Did I mention Tony Blair, did you say that?
Oh, yes, so Tony Blair got a mention as well. Yeah, that's the 3rd Conservative Prime Minister. Denis, thank you. Denis Macshane, former Labour MP, he was Minister of State for Europe, and, of course, Lance Forman, former Brexit Party MEP. I think he owes me a salmon for that as well. Thank you to both of them.